Human, what did you do to me? My heart belongs to you now. Valen had always believed in logic. Her species, the Velari, prided themselves on their perfect reasoning, free from emotional mistakes. Feelings were inefficiency, and inefficiency was weakness. So when she was assigned as an ambassador to observe humanity, she considered it just another task, nothing more. Humans were unpredictable, chaotic, full of passion and mistakes. That much she already knew. Yet she had never expected to meet someone like Elias Moore. Elias worked as a systems engineer, not a diplomat or politician. By Velari standards, he should have been unimportant, an ordinary human. But he had something Irixa had not accounted for, an effortless warmth. From the moment they met at the Cultural Exchange Center aboard the orbiting station, he treated her not as a specimen, not as a curious alien to be measured, but as a person. He asked about her experiences, listened when she answered, and even remembered small details she had mentioned in passing. At first, Irixa thought it was simple human politeness, a social ritual she could observe and catalog, but it was more than that. Every time she watched him, she felt an unfamiliar pull in her chest, a subtle tension she could not explain. Her mind, trained for flawless calculation, found itself distracted by the simplest things. The way Elias tilted his head when considering a problem, the way his eyes lit up when he discovered something new, the quiet patience he carried even when she asked questions she thought were irrelevant. She could not catalog this. There was no protocol in Velari training for the effect a human could have on one's emotions. Their work together was meant to be formal. Irixa was assigned to monitor and evaluate the human approach to problem-solving for the Galactic Accord. Humans were allowed membership despite their unpredictability, and the Velari wanted to know why. Elias, oblivious to her internal calculations, simply explained his methods as if they were ordinary, step by step, methodically, and always with encouragement. "You have to see the pattern first, then the system," he said one afternoon, crouched beside a console that displayed a maze of colored lights. "If you rush, you'll miss it. Trust the flow, not the result." Irixa frowned. Flow was illogical, result was everything. Yet when she followed his instructions, the lights aligned perfectly. A small, satisfied smile crossed his face, and something inside her shifted. It was a minor thing, but in that moment she realized she wanted to see him smile again. Over the following days, Irixa became aware of more anomalies in her own behavior. She found herself seeking out his company outside of work, lingering in conversations longer than necessary. She noticed the way her thoughts wandered to him even when she was alone, analyzing other systems or reviewing reports. Her body felt strange too, faster heartbeat, subtle warmth, a tightening in her chest that she did not understand. The Velari had no words for such sensations. There was only logic, only efficiency, only control, and she had none. Elias noticed it too, though he did not comment. Humans were perceptive, he thought, and Irixa was clearly unsettled by something. But rather than exploit it, he simply continued to treat her with quiet kindness. He did not push, did not tease, did not force anything. He let her choose her level of comfort, her pace of interaction, and in doing so, he unknowingly broke through the walls she had built around herself. One evening, they were working late in the observation chamber. The stars outside the viewport were scattered like gems across black velvet, and the silence was comforting. Elias pointed to a flickering cluster of lights on the console. "See that? If we reroute the signals this way, the system stabilizes. It's not about control, it's about harmony." Irixa studied the display, analyzing every variable. She had come to expect guidance from him, but she also felt a strange confidence in her own intuition, a confidence that seemed to grow in his presence. When she finally executed the reroute, the lights steadied, forming perfect patterns of symmetry. "That's remarkable," Elias said softly, eyes meeting hers. "You did it." Irixa felt a flutter she could not identify. Her chest tightened in a way that was not fear, not excitement, something unfamiliar, something human. "It was simple logic," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You did it," he repeated, and smiled, not because he needed to, but because he wanted her to feel it. She could not hide the tiny reaction her body betrayed, slight warmth in her face, a pulse that felt entirely irrational. Days turned into weeks, and Irix's internal struggle grew. She reviewed her own reports, trying to find a pattern to the distraction, a variable she could control. None existed. She was conscious of every heartbeat when Elias was near, every word he spoke echoing in her mind even when she was alone. She found herself reflecting on his gestures, replaying moments they shared, noticing things she had dismissed before. Each observation deepened the effect. The turning point came during a shared meal in the station's observation lounge. Humans had a ritual of sharing food, and Irixa had reluctantly agreed to join. She sat across from Elias, observing him as he spoke with ease, laughing at something trivial. There was a comfort, a natural joy in the simplicity of his gestures that she had never encountered before. "Irixa, try this," he said, offering a simple dish she had never seen. "It's sweet but not overpowering, you might like it." She hesitated. Her species distrusted indulgence, but there was no malice in his expression, only invitation. She took a small bite, and the flavor was unfamiliar, surprising. And for the first time, she realized that enjoyment could exist without error. That pleasure need not be illogical or dangerous. Elias noticed her reaction and smiled warmly. "See, not everything has to make sense immediately. Sometimes you just experience it." The words struck her unexpectedly. Experience it, not calculate, not predict, not control. Just experience. Irixa felt something in her chest tighten and then loosen, a release of tension she had not realized she was holding. And when she looked up at him, she noticed the depth in his eyes, not calculation, not judgment, but curiosity and care. She did not understand it, she could not explain it, and yet she wanted more. Back in her quarters, Irixa conducted self-diagnostics. There was no malfunction, her cognitive processes were intact. Her memory, perception, and analysis were perfect. Yet something fundamental had changed. Her mind, trained for centuries to obey logic alone, had been altered by human presence. She experienced anticipation when thinking of Elias and moments of longing she could not quantify. Her species had no words for such sensations. Days later, as they worked on integrating human technology with Velari systems, the realization hit her fully. Elias had done nothing extraordinary. He had not manipulated her, coerced her, or even asked her to feel anything. Yet through patience, kindness, and respect, he had done the impossible. He had unlocked a part of her that she had never known existed, and it scared her. One evening, after the station lights dimmed and the observation deck was quiet, she confronted him. "Human," she said, her voice unsteady despite her training. "What did you do to me?" Elias looked up, startled, but did not pull away. He studied her carefully, sensing her turmoil without judgment. "I did nothing," he replied gently. "I simply treated you as you deserve to be treated, nothing more." Irixa's mind raced. Nothing more? Her species prized clarity, yet no amount of analysis could explain the sudden warmth in her chest, the rapid pulse in her veins, the strange desire to be near him even when her logical mind screamed that it was unnecessary. "Human, my heart, it does not obey me anymore." Elias' expression softened. He reached out, but only in gesture, not touch, and said quietly, "That is your choice, Irixa, not mine. You decide what it means." She felt a mixture of awe and fear. Choice. The human concept was both terrifying and liberating. Her heart, once governed by protocols and rules, now followed a rhythm she could neither control nor resist. And for the first time, Irixa wondered if inefficiency in this form might not be weakness at all. As she left the observation deck that night, she felt a strange hope. A hope that perhaps humans were not only chaotic and unpredictable, but capable of awakening something beautiful in those around them. She did not yet understand the full extent of what Elias had done, but one thing was certain: her life had changed, and there was no going back. Outside the viewport, the stars shimmered silently, distant and eternal. And Irixa, for the first time in her long, meticulously ordered life, felt her own heartbeat echo with the quiet wonder of something completely new. Irixa could not sleep. Her mind replayed every moment with Elias, his calm voice explaining complex systems, his quiet smiles, the patience that seemed endless. Every interaction, no matter how small, left traces in her thoughts that she could not erase. She paced her quarters, trying to analyze the feeling, to reduce it to a logical pattern, but it resisted her every attempt. Logic alone could not explain it, and the truth was terrifying. The next morning, the station's corridors buzzed with activity as usual, but Irixa moved with a weight she had never felt before. Something had shifted inside her, and it was no longer just curiosity or admiration. She was aware of her own heart, an unpredictable, ungovernable pulse that had begun to dictate her actions. She arrived at the observation chamber early, hoping to distract herself with work, only to find Elias already there, tinkering with the human interface systems. "Good morning, Irixa," he said without looking up, his tone casual. Yet she could feel the warmth in it, the quiet assurance that she was welcome, that she belonged here. "Good morning," she replied, her voice tighter than she intended. She set to work silently, but her eyes kept drifting toward him. Every motion he made seemed deliberate yet effortless, as if he moved in a rhythm she could not anticipate but wanted to follow. "You seem tense," Elias observed, finally looking up. "Did something happen in your reports?" Irixa shook her head. "Nothing that can be explained. It is internal." Her voice was hesitant, almost human in its uncertainty. Elias smiled softly, as if he understood more than she was willing to admit. They worked together through the day, and Irixa realized something extraordinary. His presence was no longer just distracting, it was clarifying. With him, she could see solutions faster, understand patterns more fully, and approach problems with a confidence that was entirely new. He had not changed her mind by force. He had simply created space for her to expand it herself. But the Council's warnings echoed in her mind. The Velari had noticed her changes. Reports indicated her emotional responses were irregular, her decision-making no longer purely logical. They would demand correction, perhaps even removal from the mission. And yet, despite that knowledge, she could not imagine leaving Elias, could not imagine returning to a life where her feelings were suppressed and controlled. That evening, they shared another meal in the observation lounge. The stars outside stretched endlessly, and the quiet hum of the station made everything feel intimate and suspended in time. Elias offered her a dish with a simple smile. "Try this. It's human comfort food, nothing technical, just enjoyment." Irixa hesitated, then accepted. The taste was new and pleasant, but more than that, it carried an unspoken message. Humans cared in ways that were gentle and subtle. She found herself watching him carefully, noticing how he waited for her reaction, how he offered without expectation. That simple act, repeated countless times, had altered her perception of connection, trust, and even love. "Elias," she said quietly, "your species is unlike anything I have observed. You teach not through orders, but through invitation." He nodded. "We don't force understanding. We let people experience it and choose how it affects them. That's how real change happens." Irixa thought about that for a long moment. She had been trained to command, to control, to calculate. She had never been given the freedom to simply choose. And now she realized choice was not a weakness, it was strength. It made connection meaningful, intentional, and real. Days passed, and the pressure from the Velari Council grew. They sent messages insisting she return immediately and undergo emotional correction, a procedure designed to suppress any irregularities. They warned that her attachment to a human was unprecedented and dangerous. Elias, however, did not panic. He continued to work alongside her as if nothing had changed, offering guidance, encouragement, and gentle humor. "You have a choice, Irixa," he said one evening as they reviewed system integration protocols. "No one can make it for you. That is the power and the responsibility you now hold." She understood instantly. The human approach was not to force obedience, but to offer agency. Elias could have tried to sway her with words, but he did not. Instead, he trusted her. That trust was more powerful than any Velari protocol, more transformative than any council directive. When the day of the council hearing arrived, Irixa stood before her species, leaders, her heart beating faster than any logical mind could explain. She presented her findings clearly, highlighting humanity's contributions to technology, diplomacy, and cultural understanding. And then she spoke about the most unexpected discovery, the emotional intelligence humans carried, the ability to influence and inspire without coercion. "They do not conquer," she said, her voice steady though her chest still fluttered. "They invite, they trust, and through that trust they awaken potential that even we with all our logic have not realized. I have seen it, I have felt it, and I choose not to deny it." The council members were silent. Such declarations were unheard of. A Velari admitting to influence from humans was unprecedented, yet Irixa did not waver. "This is not weakness, it is growth, it is expansion." Humanity offers something no other species can, the freedom to choose connection even when it is illogical. That freedom is not chaos, it is evolution. Elias watched quietly from the observation deck, his calm presence grounding her. When she finished, she felt a profound sense of clarity. Her heart, once unpredictable and terrifying, now guided her with purpose. She had chosen. Returning to the station corridors, she found Elias waiting. "You were brilliant," he said simply, smiling. "I knew you would find your way." "I did not need to be guided," she replied, a small smile touching her lips. "I needed only to be seen," he nodded, "and you chose for yourself. That is the human way." They walked together in silence, the station lights casting gentle reflections on the metal floors. Irixa realized something she had never admitted before. Her species, pursuit of logic, had left them stagnant, beautiful minds capable of calculation but not connection. Humans were imperfect, unpredictable, and emotional. Yet in that imperfection lay a power that no amount of logic could replicate, the ability to inspire, to awaken, and to choose love freely. Weeks turned into months, and Irix's presence among the humans became permanent. She continued her duties as an ambassador, but her perspective had changed. She learned to laugh at mistakes, to savor small joys, and to embrace the uncertainty of her own heart. She and Elias grew closer, not through coercion or expectation, but through shared experience, quiet trust, and mutual respect. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck watching a starfield slowly rotate beyond the station's window, Elias spoke softly. "Irixa, do you understand now?" "Yes," she replied, her hand brushing against his in a natural gesture of connection. "I understand that my heart belongs where I choose it to be." He smiled, and for the first time she felt entirely at peace with her own feelings. The fear of unpredictability had vanished, replaced by the exhilaration of freedom. The Velari might never fully understand her choice, but she no longer needed their approval. Humanity had taught her something far greater than protocol or logic. It had taught her the strength in openness, the courage in vulnerability, and the power in choosing to care. As the stars moved silently beyond them, Irixa allowed herself to finally relax. Her mind was still precise, still analytical, but her human heart, was alive. It beat in rhythm not only with her own thoughts, but with the quiet, steady presence of Elias Moore, the human who had done nothing but be himself, and in doing so had given her a gift that no species could ever replicate. For the first time, she understood belonging, not as control, not as possession, but as shared experience, as choice, as connection. And she knew, without question, that her heart had chosen where it wanted to be. Life aboard the station had begun to feel like home to Irixa in a way she never thought possible. The precise routines she had once valued now felt constraining compared to the gentle unpredictability of human presence. The stars outside the viewports stretched endlessly, but inside, the hum of the station and the quiet rhythm of daily life were just as significant. She had spent countless hours observing, analyzing, and learning, but with Elias by her side, she had begun to feel rather than calculate. That morning, she found him working on a holographic map of the sector, the soft glow of the display illuminating his focused expression. "Elias," she said softly, approaching him, "why do you always make it look so effortless?" He looked up and smiled, a small, unassuming grin. "Because I don't try to make it effortless. I just do what feels natural, and I trust it will lead somewhere useful." Irixa tilted her head, fascinated. The Velari had taught her to calculate every step, to anticipate every error, to control every outcome. And yet here was a human, acting with confidence without the need for constant calculation. His calm certainty was unlike anything she had experienced. It was not chaos exactly. It was something new, something she could not fully define. "You make decisions differently," she said, almost to herself. "Not because they are better, but because they flow." He nodded. "I suppose humans often think in terms of connections, not just outcomes. Sometimes the right choice isn't the one predicted by logic. It's the one that honors the people, the circumstances, and the possibilities." Irixa studied him, realizing that every lesson he had offered her, the patience, the kindness, the subtle guidance, was not just about solving problems. It was about understanding life, about seeing potential and giving it space to grow. She had learned more from his presence than from years of Velari training. Later that day, a small crisis arose in the station's energy grid. It was minor, nothing that could not be handled by routine protocol, but Irixa noticed that the human engineers were hesitant to override the system entirely. They consulted her, not because they needed authority, but because they trusted her perspective. Elias suggested a compromise, Allow the system to adapt gradually, monitor the results, and intervene only if necessary. Irixa hesitated. Logic dictated immediate action, precise correction, and zero risk. But she remembered his lessons, the trust, the patience, the willingness to allow space for growth. She nodded. "Very well," she said. "We will try your approach." Hours later, the grid stabilized perfectly, more efficiently than any protocol she could have implemented alone. Irixa felt a thrill, not of calculation or triumph, but of shared success. It was a quiet, deep satisfaction, the kind that comes from collaboration, understanding, and trust. Elias caught her eye and smiled, the simple acknowledgement carrying warmth, encouragement, and companionship all at once. That evening, Irixa found herself walking along the observation deck alone. The stars outside glittered like 1,000 distant fires, and the quiet hum of the station was a steady companion. She reflected on how far she had come. Her heart, once a strictly controlled organ, had opened in ways she could not have predicted. She no longer feared her feelings. They were not distractions, but guides. She had discovered a rhythm to life that the Velari never embraced: trust, connection, and the courage to choose. Elias joined her quietly, his presence familiar and grounding. "Irixa," he said softly, "do you ever think about what it all means? Not the work, not the protocols, but the rest." She nodded. "Every day, I am beginning to understand that the rest, the choices, the connections, the small moments, is what makes life meaningful. Logic can guide, but it cannot inspire. That comes from this," she said, her hand resting lightly over her chest. He smiled. "You've learned well, Irixa, but it wasn't just me. It was you too. You chose to allow it." She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a steady pulse of understanding and recognition. The human way was not to dominate, not to force, not to control. It was to offer freedom, to allow growth, to respect choice. And through that, she had grown in ways the Velari could never have predicted. In the days that followed, Irixa and Elias continued to collaborate closely. They found solutions together that neither could have achieved alone, combining human intuition with Velari precision. And through it all, their bond deepened, not through grand gestures or declarations, but through shared experience, quiet respect, and trust. One afternoon, as they observed a newly discovered star cluster, Irixa found herself speaking more openly than ever before. "Elias, I have come to realize something remarkable. Humanity does not simply adapt to the universe. You change it, not through force or domination, but through influence, connection, and choice." He nodded. "We believe that small actions matter. That trust, patience, and care can shape outcomes more than brute force ever could. It seems simple, but it is powerful." Irixa smiled softly. She had learned that power did not always lie in control. It could lie in freedom, in understanding, in the quiet acts that allowed others to flourish. And she felt profoundly grateful for him, for humanity, and for the unexpected path that had brought her to this realization. Weeks later, a message arrived from the Velari Council. It was not the stern directive she had expected, but an acknowledgement of her progress. They recognized that her emotional development had enhanced her abilities, and that the human influence she had experienced was not a liability, but an opportunity for understanding and growth. Irixa allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. She had not only changed herself, but she had demonstrated the potential for transformation across her species. Elias joined her in the observation lounge, noticing the calm triumph on her face. "Good news?" he asked. Irixa nodded. "They understand, or at least they are beginning to." She laughed softly, a sound light and unrestrained. "It is remarkable to be acknowledged for something I once feared would be condemned." He smiled, reaching out to take her hand. "You earned it, Irixa. You embraced it, chose it, and lived it. That is more powerful than any argument or protocol." As they stood together, gazing at the stars, Irixa felt a quiet, steady certainty. The journey that had begun with curiosity, patience, and subtle guidance had grown into something deeper. A life shared, a heart awakened, and a mind expanded. She understood that humanity's greatest gift was not just creativity or ingenuity, but the ability to inspire choice, growth, and connection in others. Over time, she became a bridge between the Velari and humans, translating understanding, fostering collaboration, and demonstrating that emotional intelligence and logic could coexist. She watched with fascination as others began to adopt human approaches, learning that trust, empathy, and patience could lead to innovation and harmony in ways protocol alone could not. One evening, As they walked along the deck, Elias stopped and looked at her. "Do you ever think about the first time we met?" he asked. Irixa smiled, remembering the moment with clarity. "I thought you were ordinary, a human with no remarkable traits beyond kindness and patience. I did not realize how extraordinary that could be." He chuckled softly. "Extraordinary is just seeing what is already there. Humans are ordinary in appearance, but the way we choose, connect, and care, that is what makes the difference." She felt the truth of it in her chest. The warmth that had once been strange and frightening was now a steady, guiding presence. It was not a weakness, it was her strength. And she knew that she would carry it forward, not only for herself but for her species, for the humans she had come to admire, and for the possibilities of what they could achieve together. As the station lights dimmed and the stars shimmered beyond the windows, Irixa and Elias stood together in quiet companionship. There was no need for words, no need for grand declarations or dramatic gestures. They shared a simple understanding. Connection, choice, and trust were the foundation of something enduring, something transformative. Irixa realized that she had changed in ways she could never have predicted. She had begun as a disciplined, logical observer, immune to distraction, certain of her purpose. Now she was more than that. She was capable of understanding, connection, and love. She had discovered that the human heart, in all its unpredictability, was not weakness. It was the key to growth, to inspiration, and to a life lived fully. And as she looked at Elias, she knew with quiet certainty that her heart belonged where she had chosen, not by command, not by protocol, but freely, willingly, and fully. The universe stretched endlessly around them, infinite and full of possibilities. And for Irixa Valen, the Veleri who had once believed only in logic, the lesson was simple. To see, to trust, and to allow the heart to guide the mind was the most powerful choice of all. With that understanding, she stepped forward into the unknown, ready to embrace whatever came next, together with the human who had taught her the true meaning of connection.